Hi and welcome to today's webinar. Let's give it just another couple of moments to let people log on. All right. So today's webinar is H&M on double sales, half impact for IT. We have invited Eric Nilsson, who is head of sustainable IT at H&M, to share their journey and their story when the organization was doubling in size, but were going to reduce the impact of their IT department by half. A very interesting case about how what they did and how it worked and their learnings and experiences. A couple of housekeeping rules before we get started. You can ask questions in the question box. We're going to read them after the presentation. And after Eric has presented, we're going to invite Søren Enholm, CEO of TCO Development, to join the discussion in a panel debate together with Eric. So we're going to address most of the questions at the end. But feel free to write them when you have them, and we'll gather them and read as many as we can. We may not be able to answer all your questions, but in that case, we're going to try to reach out to you after the webinar to have them answered either in a collective form or directly if it's something specific. The webinar will be available on demand afterwards to watch, so don't worry if you have to leave early or can't catch it all or have colleagues you want to share it with. We're going to email you to it in about a week's time after this session. So quickly, TCO certified is the global leading sustainability certification for IT products. We have today 11 product categories covering IT office equipment and data center products. Would you like to know more about TCO certified or reach out to us about any questions? You're welcome to email our purchaser engagement team after the webinar, and they'll be happy to talk to you. Okay, so without further ado, let's get Eric on the stage to talk about their project. Welcome, Eric. There we go. Hi.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. We're very happy to have you here.
Yep, thanks for having me. Okay, my name is Eric Nilsson. I work for H&M in a part of our business that is called Business Tech. Business Tech is a newly founded business organization within H&M where we combine business development with IT and AI. I'm going to talk to you about IT sustainability today, some of the initiatives that we have done, and also start with the problems in the world, the reason why we actually need to do something about it. So let's get to it. First, just a short glance at H&M Group, as we're called today. We exist on 74 markets. We have about 5,000 stores. We have e-commerce in over 50 markets, and we're over 180,000 employees. And many of you may not know that it's not only the H&M brand, we also have other stores that we own and operate completely, such as COS, Weekday, Monkey, and others. So this is just to start up with our view of sustainable IT. Sustainable IT for us is, if you look at the foundation of it, it's about sustainable procurement, because you need to consider social aspects of hardware. You need to consider production and reducing the contribution of emissions, pollution, and electronic waste. And let's be fair and also say that this is a very linear industry still at the moment. It's getting better, but it's still very linear. We see tech and an IT solution as possibly the environmental hero, where we actually can use modern technology to reduce our climate footprint and better the life on Earth, so to speak. We also focus on acting sustainable. I'm going to get back to that later on, but there are, of course, new technology and new innovations, and that with that also comes new issues and problems that we need to face. So if you talk about the problems in the world that surrounds IT and tech, I use this boat to visualize what I'm talking about. So let's pretend that all these containers are all the good things about internet. It's all the applications and the internet. You can Google anything. You can find whatever you want. You can do all your services there. So it's a ship full of goodies. And also, when you look at what tech and IT can do for the business and the world, is mostly that you can digitalize almost anything today. You can dematerialize. You don't need printouts. You don't need to go on business trips because you can have a webinar, for instance, like this. And also, when tech is so smart that we actually can use it to optimize, for instance, logistics and transports and stuff like that. The problem with it is that it needs a lot of clients. Everybody needs a client to reach those services that we enjoy so much. And just looking in the world at the moment, I think the figure is about 400 million new Surface and laptops are produced every year. That's a crazy amount, especially if you consider how much plastics and metals and minerals that needs to go into that. And the problem is that it's not circular enough today. It's mostly virgin materials. So we need clients and we need somewhere to operate those services that we use. And then we come to data centers. And data centers use a lot of energy. And also to connect the clients with the data centers, we need a lot of network equipment. And that is the same as for everything else. It's a lot of plastics, metals, and minerals needed to do that. So the problems, first, as I mentioned, it's the resources, a lot of virgin material, and most of you know that the yearly overshot day is somewhere in July, August, I think. Where we have used this year's amount of material that we actually can take out from Earth without harming it, so to speak. And if you consider all these data centers and all these networks and all these clients that we use and buy, often new products, it creates a lot of e-waste. But let's not call it e-waste, because we should consider it as resources that we actually can do something, a new product from, or something like that. It affects the climate, of course, because we need a lot of energy, and we need a lot of energy in producing those units that we're going to use. And another problem is that it contains hazardous substances. Not all of it, but many products still do, which is kind of crazy because these hazardous substances is actually forbidden in the rest of society. You can't use it in clothes, you can't use it in the food industry or the toy industry or anywhere else. But somehow in IT equipment, we can still find these kind of substances. So I have a listener here who actually created this slide once. This is an Earth rising from the moon, just to visualize that this is what we have to play with. What we burn as waste today is not going to be useful for millions of years. When it comes to the equipment, the way I see it and the way we look at it when it comes to hazardous substances is that if we're going to buy, for instance, laptops, and our colleagues are supposed to have them in their hands, in their laps, in front of them 8 hours a day as a standard, they should at least be toxic free, right? Because suddenly you as an employee put something in the lap of an employee that is toxic and actually can make you sick. And I mean, no one wants that, right? When it comes to climate, the figures are still adding up to that 2 out of 3 websites used in the world are still powered by fossil fuel. Because when we go out on the internet and we open up a website or we use an application, we don't know where in the world, in which data center this service is unpacked. So we're going to get back to that on geographical touch points, of course. Social aspects in production. For me, working at H&M, I guess you read a lot in media about the fashion industry. We produce our garments in actually the same regions as hardware is produced mostly in the world. So it's exactly the same challenges in hardware production as it is for us when it comes to garment production. It's still about working hour, it's about forced labor, it's about child labor, and it's about being able to join a union, just simple things like having a break during the workday and stuff like that. So it's the same questions that we need to consider. Minerals. Not sure that everybody is aware of this, so I'm going to talk you through it. Conflict minerals are specifically from the region in Democratic Republic of Congo. And here they are mining 4 rare earth minerals because the mines are very rich here. The problem is that there's an ongoing war there. It's the deadliest war since World War II, actually. And you have a lot of guerrilla groups fighting over territory, and the gain from this industry of minerals is actually fueling the conflict. So it's really nasty, and it's really something that we need to consider, especially since everybody is using some kind of smartphone today, and they all contain these kind of minerals. It's very hard to track. When it comes to electronic waste, this is a major business in the world. The problem is that we, of course, overconsume in some kind of linear economy, mostly in the West. And once we're done with it, a lot of the equipment ends up in dump sites in Africa and Asia, especially as this picture is taken in Ghana. And there, thousands of people live day by day by burning the electronical cables to extract the copper to sell to another scrap dealer. And that's how they make a living. The problem with that is, of course, the ground is toxic. People get sick, they die young, babies are stillborn or born with defects and stuff like that. And mostly the e-waste come from West. So this is a really, really big problem that we really need to be taking care of in the future. And as you can see, there's a lot of money involved here. So just a glance at the world today. In 2020, those figures are from 2020, more than 4.5 billion internet users. And you can see how it has grown since 2003 as an example. So what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is if you just look at what happens on the internet for 1 minute, just 60 seconds, you can look at the figures for yourself. It's 1 million logins on Facebook. It's almost 4 million search on Google, and almost 700,000 hours of Netflix watched. So connect that to what I've told you earlier in this presentation, and you can easily understand that data centers is one of the world's fastest growing industries. And connected to that comes all the parts of supply chain for hardware and fossil fuel energy. So what we did back in 2011 is that we started looking at what's the status of our infrastructure, our energy consumption, and what kind of energy and what kind of equipment are we using. We also took this as a foundation. It's from the environmental program of the UN, where they talk about human well-being and economic activity is something that we want to continue to rise, of course, but we want to decouple it from resource use and environmental impact. So we decided that we're going to do something about it internally first. So we saw that in 5 years' time, we would go from about 2,500 stores to about 5,000 stores. And we also knew that the volume of infrastructure needed for that is almost linear with the growth of stores. So we started looking at the equipment we had. Let me take an example. Our desktops that we used a lot at this time weighed about 8.5, 9 kilos of metals and plastics. we could easily find an equally good desktop that weighed only 1 kilo. So one of the assumptions that we quickly took on was that if we buy smaller and lighter and hazardous-free products, there's much less virgin material needed for our own operations. So we looked at pools in store, that is the cash points, the tills. We looked at office clients, servers, and data centers as a whole, with cooling, with backup, and with batteries and everything included. And we said, okay, we're going to focus on climate, the energy consumption, resources, and hazardous substances. So let's see if you're good at math. What we saw is that if we start at baseline 100 and we're going to be at 200 in 5 years, we are gonna halve the impact from IT operations in the same amount of time. And including the growth, that means that we actually need to go down more than 50%. It becomes 75%. So I'm going to take you through some of the actions that we performed to trying to achieve these goals. So these are the main scope for action points that we decided upon. Sustainable procurement, we could easily buy lighter products that was hazardous free and also didn't use up more than maybe 5 to 10% of the energy consumption on the current infrastructure. We started looking at energy saving functions, for instance, on all laptops for all employees working at our offices. And just to give you a figure of what that becomes on the electrical bill for 1 year, just sleep mode on our laptops saves us about 500,000 to 600,000 euros every year on the electrical bill. Of course, we virtualized all the servers. We had a lot of physical servers when we started. And we also looked at the data center as a whole. So we did initiatives on both energy, cooling, and other efficiency initiatives that actually made us being able to say that we had a climate positive data center. And how can we say that? Yes, we partnered up with a power company and said that all the excess heat from our data centers, we want to send back on the district heating system for you to use to warm up apartments in Stockholm City. So that's when we went from climate neutrality to climate positivity. Because climate neutral is pretty easy here in Sweden. You can buy renewable energy 100% pretty easy. So that was not the hard part, so to speak. We put in place a global program for reuse and recycling of IT equipment. I'm going to get back to you in details on that. And of course, we looked at printout. So still actually is something to consider in 2021. You would think that no one prints anymore, but they do. So what we looked upon when it came to sustainable procurement, we said that we should not deviate from our standard plan. We should decide what kind of equipment is sustainable, and that is the standard equipment. And only in special cases for heavy developers and stuff like that, we deviate from that standard. We designed a sustainable IT requirement document and demanded that in all IT procurement, both when it comes to procuring hardware or software or external services, the sustainable IT requirements needs to be considered and written upon by both parts. So I'm going to get back to you a little later on that also. We also enforce a lot of sustainable requirements when it comes to external services, for instance, data centers, cloud services, and such. And we will only go with partners that have the same high ambition as we do when it comes to climate. So when it comes to sustainable procurement, in a big company like H&M, you can't be 100% on everything because there's always situations that need something else than you decide is standard. But these are the things that we look at from the sustainability and procurement part. And here I feel it's fair to say that in this project, at the most, we were actually 4 people working full time, 3 to 4 people working full time on this. So we actually had the people and the resources to look at all these things, and that's why it's so detailed. I mean, for TCO certified to be involved here is of course making it much easier for us, because then we don't need to look for all these details. We can just say that, okay, this is a TCO certified product. We know that the standards are met, and we also get all the social aspects of sustainability requirements included in that. If you have more questions regarding these details, we can take that afterwards, because I'm not going to go through them all. So, sorry, give me a few seconds here. So when it comes to safe handling of electronic waste, we always prioritize internal or external reuse. I would say that it's 99% external reuse. We use global partners who are specialists at asset recovery. They take in our products after 3 years. They try it out, exchange small parts if they're broken, and then they sell it on the second-hand market. And the assumption early in the project was actually that this is going to cost us money. We're going to have to pay a lot of money to do the right thing here. But this program actually ends up on the plus side every year. Pretty vast numbers also. So this is just an example where sustainability and the economics goes hand in hand. And just to show you the day-to-day issues that I handle in my role, this is just a map of, let's say, 60 to 65 of the markets that we exist on. Some parts of the world is really easy to do the right thing when it comes to asset recovery. In some parts, you can find maybe a local solution that is fairly good enough. And in some parts of the world, you cannot find any solution. And it's connected to a lot of things. It's cultural values. We don't see climate change and resource scarcity from the same angle in different parts of the world. There are local rules and regulations, and you also have global rules and regulations that wants to protect developing countries from a vast volume of incoming e-waste, of course. That actually prohibits me to export equipment from those difficult markets. So something really a major change is needed here for this to be better in the future. These are some highlights and key results from double sales half impact. We managed to create climate positive data centers with solar panels and heat recovery. We came down to 85% less energy per server unit. And as you can see on the standard PC and our tills, our cache points, we could easily also decrease the energy consumption there. And just by changing the products that we bought, we could go down 85% in weight in kilograms on the standard PC. And I can proudly say that over 90% of our infrastructure on a global base is handled by professional asset recovery services today. Now the problem is that if you work for media, for instance, or something like that, the 7% that is left is the one that you're gonna go for, right? So that's what I go for every day. It's the last 7% that really bugs me. Let's look at the results for double sales half impact when we added it up, and we stopped measuring the way this initiative was set up in 2018. So as you can see, number of stores didn't reach 100%, and that's because of digitalization, of course. We had to focus more on e-commerce than opening stores. Resources, we didn't reach nearly what we set out for, and that's mainly because we're still using hardware and PCs in stores as cash points, which you can discuss if that is really something that is good. But we're looking at new cloud solutions there, so this curve will also bend soon. We almost reached it when it came to hazardous substances, and when it comes to energy, our main goal, we actually reached it. So we're very happy with that. And if you're not familiar with calculating kilowatt hours and carbon dioxide, if you translate it on the electrical bill, it almost added up to 7 million euros on the electrical bill during these 6 years. And I think the last time we looked at it, we saw an annual saving on the electrical bill for about 2 million euros every year, just because of the work we did, not changing anything. So just some key factors that made this project so successful as we see it. We had the management support and resources. I told you at the most we were 4 people working full time on this project, which was a real privilege. We did a lot of communication and training. I think we have trained about 1,500 colleagues on these matters and what we're doing and how they can contribute to our aims. We have participated in all major strategic projects to ensure that sustainable IT requirements is always part of it. We set up clear and measurable goals, and we put up the steering documents needed for this so that we actually could go external and telling our partners and vendors and suppliers that this is what we aim for and this is our demands. I'm gonna jump through over some of the slides here because of time. I'm gonna jump straight up here and talk about where IT can be the environmental hero, as we call it. We can do a lot of cool stuff with tech, and this is where we need to focus in the future. We need to focus on efficient logistics, digital service, of course. E-commerce is taking over the world in all aspects, in all industries. We need to use tech and IT for visualization and transparency, because today the customer really demands to know everything about every little detail. So this is really important area for us. Like for everybody else, flexible work, digital meeting, having really good solution that you can rely on, for instance, for this webinar or whatever it might be. We focus a lot on AI, of course, and also a lot of sustainable innovation that we're gonna need to be able to turn our industry into a sustainable industry. So this is just to show you what we aim for. If you consider this as our total value chain, this is the value chain of a garment at H&M. There's a lot of aspects here for us to consider, and there's a lot of issues that we need to design out of the supply chain. And also part of this is, of course, like 35% of the energy consumption that is involved around the garment is the use part, where you as a customer use the garment. And we say that we're gonna solve that issue also. But we can do a lot with tech. We can do virtual samples instead of sending pieces back and forth between Asia and Stockholm when we design stuff. We can make more efficient logistics. We can have virtual fitting, so you can try out at home in your bedroom, for instance, our garments and find the exact fit for your body type and your taste of clothes. And we can also use a lot of visualizations of the progress that we're trying to perform here. So with new solutions and new innovation, there comes new challenges, right? So for instance, if you take AI, suddenly when you can use an intelligence that is not your own, you need to have some kind of rules to control that, right? So for instance, if I say that I could face scan you when you enter an H&M store, and I can connect your face to business data about your purchasing history, I could possibly use that information to come up to you and give you an offer connected to the business data I have. That's technically possible, but if you look at it from a moral perspective, if I can, should I or would I? Because then suddenly you're talking about personal integrity, you're talking about GDPR and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things going on here, and you need to find some kind of consensus within industries in how to solve this. I also work a lot at the moment with inclusion in diversity, which some people would say is pretty far off from IT, but we see as a company that we need to be much better at inclusion and diversity, since we operate on a global market and about 75 markets. So we need to be represented everywhere in the world to make sure that the fashion industry is democratized, so to speak. And just to finish off, tell you a little story. A few years ago, I was invited to do this lecture on a big stage in Madrid, and I got the opportunity to meet a man named William McDonough. He's an author. He wrote the book Cradle to Cradle, and he's also referred to as the godfather of circular economy. And he looked at the project and what we had done, and he said to me, well, this is really cool, Eric. You've done a lot of reduction and stuff like that, but it's all about being less bad. And I said, so, and what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong, but you need to change your mindset. The world needs to change their mindset. It's not about doing less bad, it's about doing more good. And when you focus on that mindset, you're going to be able to innovate and create a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Let's see if we can get my image up and running again. There we are. Very interesting presentation. I know you have done it before with great interest from your audience, and I understand why. This is an important topic, and I think it's very, very fascinating how H&M is so committed to doing this work in their IT department, given that it's not their core business. But it really shows that you take a kind of broader sustainability commitment, and you look at also other aspects of your business and how you can contribute with that. We got a couple of questions rolling in, so feel free to ask more. You have the question box, and we will do our best to raise them. I'd like to welcome also Søren Enholm to the discussion, who's going to help us answer any questions relating more to TCO certified and the work that we do in the space of IT and driving for more sustainable IT products. Hi, Søren.
Hi there. Thank you.
And I realize I've forgotten to introduce myself at the beginning. I'm Cassandra Julin. I'm PR and Communication Manager at TCO Development, moderating this discussion today. So I'm very curious, Eric. I have a bunch of questions myself, so let me start on one of them. As I mentioned, big commitment from you guys in the field of IT. How did you get the kind of internal organization behind you? How did you get internal commitment to do this big change?
Well, I mean, we had people who knew, who were experts on this from the beginning in the project, that could showcase the environmental impact and the difference we could make in our choices, and we could also present the business cases surrounding that. But I would also say that, I mean, most people are aware of for instance, climate change, and most people want to make a change and be part of it. So I would say that it was pretty easy. I mean, we try to be a sustainable company. We try to change the industry, the fashion industry, to being more sustainable. So this is just a part of it that we saw that we can actually make a change and actually be on the edge and do something that others can join or take after, so to speak.
Good answer. So we got a question regarding hazardous substances. So what does H&M include in your definition of hazardous substances? So what chemicals and substances are you looking at?
Well, we decided to go for the same hazardous substances that we forbid in our garments. So it's the same. I would say it's for instance cadmium. It's mercury, lead, and hazardous substances like that.
Søren, do you want to reflect on this? Because I know with TCU Certified, we work a lot with hazardous substances as well, and our approach, I think, is quite unique. Do you want to mention that?
Yes, definitely. I think I would like to connect it to not just doing less bad, but actually doing good. That's kind of what we're trying to do with hazardous substances. So the traditional approach has been to ban or avoid hazardous substances, but then they have been replaced with other substances that might also be hazardous. And this is a common problem in the industry, not only the IT industry, but in general. The legislation is usually focused on banning the bad ones. So what we have done is we've tried to turn it around and not only banning the bad ones, but also making sure that the replacements are better alternatives. So we have a positive substitution from really bad ones to better ones. And I think this is really needed in dealing with hazardous substances. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Søren. We have another question for you, Eric. Do you make use of remanufactured service and storages already? So it's in the remanufacturing and reuse space, or is that something you work with at all in your IT department?
Sorry, can you rephrase that question?
Yes, someone is interested if you work or use remanufactured products, and this question related to servers, but I guess you can apply it also to any IT equipment.
I would say in most cases no. I would be happy to say that we're not. We're looking at it at the moment. There's a lot of cool solution out there. You can buy carbon neutral laptops and stuff like that. And I think we and everybody else need to consider new solutions. I mean, the equipment that's already here, that we've already made from virgin materials, we should of course use them as long as possible. Maybe not in the original setting, but remanufactured, for instance. So this is something that we can do a lot better in the future.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an area that's growing a lot right now, for good reasons. So do you have a policy related to procurement of IT hardware, or is this something you do based on individual calculations, or what's your approach there?
We have created standardized documentation. So we have for procurement, we have standardized RFI documents, RFP documents, and a document that we call IT sustainability requirements. And that sets the agenda for climate, resources, hazardous substances, and the social aspects of hardware production, so to speak. So we have that, and we've used it throughout the whole project, and we actually have seen that this makes a change in procurement when talking to the suppliers, because I mean, they've been waiting for the sustainability requirements from IT side. That's my feeling when we talk about it, and I think it's actually driving a change.
Mm. And is there anything you wish you knew when you started this project that you've learned like along the way? It's a big
Well,
question, I know.
a lot. I mean, smaller details. I would have put a lot of more efforts into automating how we measured and followed up the initiatives within double sales. I would have happily known more about local rules and regulations regarding asset recovery in different parts of the world, and that it took me a few years to actually become what I would say today an expert on it, because there's a lot of tricky stuff that you need to read up on and understand about other cultures and their local way of looking at these issues.
Hmm. And I mean, obviously you're a larger organization, I think that's fair to say, and you've had support implementing this project. But Søren, also, is there a role TCO Certify can have also for smaller and bigger organizations in their journey towards more sustainable IT products? What would you say? What's the strength of using TCO Certified, and what can we contribute with?
Yes, I mean that's really the role of TCO Certified, I would say. A big company like H&M, they obviously use TCO Certified for some parts or to support some parts of their strategy. And then they have, in some areas, they have more ambitious goals, and that they can focus on those, and we manage some of the other ones. For smaller organizations, usually don't have the resources to learn all necessary aspects to be able to drive this in an efficient manner. So I think for them it's important that they can rely on something that is a really good base and a comprehensive good base to do this. Maybe if they are really ambitious, they choose one more thing to do themselves personally, to learn more and be a driver on, but this is complex. so that's the role that TCO Certified plays.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you can mention a couple of things as well about the strength of TCO Certified on the ground. The fact that, you know, when purchasers stand behind the criteria in TCO Certified, it gives a change with the collective voice, so to say, of purchasers as well. Do you want to reflect on that?
Definitely. I mean, you can look at it from two perspectives. One, yes, we are can be a support for organizations to fulfill their policies and strategies, but really, again, going back to doing good and not only less bad. What we want to do is really to be a collective driving force to put collective demands on the IT industry, because some things you can do in this field is cost neutral or even cost positive, as Erik has mentioned. But some things really do cost money, and together we should make it worthwhile for the industry players to make these investments. And the collective voice of all the organizations using TCO Certified is crucial. It's that's what makes it happen from our perspective. Yeah.
And we received a question a little bit linked to this for you, Erik. If you had any problems getting the supply chain to listen to your criteria and requests and demands, or if you were, how were you received from the different if you call them partners or supply chain.
I mean, the most common problem I would say in procurement when it comes to these requirements is that when you have a procurement phase with the big companies, the big tech companies in the world, they have their own sustainability commitment document that they follow, of course, and they're not really willing to sign our documents because we're just one of thousands of customers, and if everybody has their own IT sustainability requirements, they can't keep track of it, of course. So this is something that we're trying to remediate at the moment to actually align more over the industry and our demands. So it almost in every procurement it stops when it comes to the IT sustainability requirements, and we need to talk about it.
We receive a lot of questions on your policy documents. Will you be able to share any of them, or are they confidential?
I will have to get back on that. I think it could be possible that I could share them. Not today, but for anyone who's interested, we could possibly make that happen.
All right, so let's connect back to that question and see.
Yeah.
Someone is interested here in if you have some doing more good examples when it comes to hazardous substances. Do you have anything concrete there to share, or any good stories?
Not on hazardous substances, no. I don't know what that would be. I mean, I like the way TCO is working with it. I mean, reversing it, talking about the white list instead of a black list. I think that what the world needs in all aspects, in all industries. But I mean, if you look at those substances that can be part of your equipment, you really want to exclude them pretty quickly, because if you look at the world, I mean, you get the media picture, for instance, that cancer as a disease is increasing among people, and it's younger people who gets those kind of diseases. And what is the difference if you look at today's younger generations on how they live, if you connect that to how their grandparents live? Well, we're always connected. We're always with the device in our hands, in our laptops, in our beds, in our chairs, on our tables. So you have to draw your own conclusions about that, but I don't have a specific case I can tell you about that. I just have strong views.
Yes, you're obviously very passionate about the subject, and that's very good. We need those pioneers like you, Eric. So do you have any suggestions for a company that like to move in the same direction? Like, what would your advice be?
I mean, if you have the resources to actually have people working on this who are engaged and want to make a change, I would suggest that you do something similar to double sales half impact, and that you are really tough on setting the system borders. These are the rules, and this is what we focus on. If you try to do the whole case of being sustainable 100% in all details, I think you will not succeed. So that's my main recommendation. Otherwise, I would connect back to what Søren said about TCO certified. I mean, that's a really good way of doing it. If you don't have the time or the resources to actually have people working at the level that we're doing at the moment, I would say that buying TCO certified products would be a good way of going about. And also look at new solutions like climate neutral laptops, of course, for instance, and other solutions in the same area.
Very good. There's a bunch of questions also covering the future, like where do you see H&M's work going moving forward? I mean, you've obviously done this very impressive project in the past, but where's your focus now, and where are you moving? What areas are you looking at besides the 7% that keeps you sleepless at night.
Yeah. I'm still set out to solve those 7%. There's a lot of things going on there. Actually, things I can't talk about because there's a lot of politics involved, of course. But I mean, we're still growing as a company, and there's new tech solutions, and we're going cloud as everybody else. So our main focus when it comes to climate, I mean, double sales of impact, everything was in our own operation. It was pretty easy to just take the decision because we own the operations. Today, when we put our total operations in someone else's hand, we need to rely on their journey of becoming climate neutral or climate positive, for instance. So instead of having meetings internally with the data center guys, I have to talk to, for instance, Microsoft's data center guys in the US and about their energy efficiency and how they are becoming a climate neutral company. And I mean, just if someone told me 5 years ago, you need to be an expert on climate offsets because that's what a lot of companies are going to use in the future. And I would have not known anything about it, but today I have to know about it. But since the new technology, the new innovations that we also create, it's going to need a lot of clients and data centers and network equipment. So we need to prolong the action points of double sales of impact, of course. But also, as I said earlier, the environmental hero that IT and tech can be. So I'm of course involved in the journey of us becoming a circular company. I gave you some examples on our supply chain, what we can do and what we are doing to some extent when it comes to the customer part of a garment's journey, for instance. So there's a lot of things left to do there. And I always say the best innovations are not invented yet. Maybe there's a bright idea tomorrow that we need to follow up on.
That's a very good point. So Søren, with TCO certified, what's the future there, and what are we looking at moving ahead now? Because there's an exciting year this year, right?
Yes, definitely, and I agree fully with Eric that we still have lots of things to do going forward, and yes, we are releasing a new generation of criteria at the end of this year. We do that every 3 years, and we have definitely worked a lot on circularity and criteria connected to this. So sorry. So this is an important development for us going forward. But also it's really important to work more long term, and that's also something that we do now. We have started to look more and more further into the future and create specific visions for different areas as well. So that will be exciting for us going forward, and at some point we will also be able to share that with you and discuss it with you as well.
Sounds good. An hour goes quickly when we're having fun and talking about interesting topics like today's subject. This webinar will be available on demand in about a week's time, so don't worry if you missed anything or had to leave early. Thanks a lot to Eric, who joined us today to share your learnings and experience from double sales half impact. And thank you, Søren, for jumping in also at late notice, being stand-in for our colleague who had a happy family edition that he had to attend to instead. So very happy to have you both here. Thanks a lot to all of you listeners. And if you have any questions about TCO Certified, about this webinar, feel free to reach out to us and we'll do our best to answer your questions. Thank you.